Good evening, Gills fans. Welcome back to the latest episode of Gills in the Blood TV. It is Wednesday evening and we are recording a match preview show, but it is a match preview show with a slight difference this week. Such is the nature of the beast. Easter weekend brings two fixtures inside 4 days. Good Friday, Gills will take on Doncaster Rovers 3 p.m. at the Men's Priestfield Stadium before travelling slightly north, but not too far north for us, to Sixfield to take on John Brady's Northampton Town, who are chasing promotion. Two guests tonight, so we're going to try and run this simultaneously. So do bear with us. Do bear with me. It's all on me if this goes wrong. I've got Daniel Nice, a Doncaster fan, and I've got a familiar face to anyone who listens to podcasts. I've got Charles Commins with the brilliant It's All Cobblers to Me, Northampton Town podcast. Gentlemen, appreciate you coming on. Daniel, apologies, it's slightly delayed. I am blaming Charles for that.
No problem.
Thanks for having us, Matt.
No worries. Absolute pleasure. Right, let's go Doncaster first, because that's the Good Friday fixture. Looking at current form, Gills in the last 6 have picked up 10 points from 18 available, so not such a too bad return. That is comprised of 3 wins, a draw, and 2 defeats. You'll have to bear with me if I squint, everyone, because I've just explained to Charles and Daniel that I've wrote notes for one preview show on the same bit of paper. I can barely see it. Doncaster, 4 points from 18 available over the last half a dozen. It's not pretty reading. And if we break that down into home and away, the gap in terms of form gets bigger. Gills have taken 15 points from the last half dozen games, with 5 wins out of 6 on their own patch. Doncaster, 5 points from 18 on their travels. Daniel, it's not been pretty reading as a Doncaster fan over recent weeks. I mean, it's only a month or so back. There was still talk of the playoffs, but I think that's long sort of vanished into the spring air.
Yeah, definitely. I think it was always going to be like an outside chance we had. But yeah, we're suffering a bit at the minute with a lot of injuries, and we're just in that phase where really, if the season ended now, I think everyone wouldn't lose too much sleep about it, and try and get your players back and some new signings into the next season. But yeah, we're almost got the worst possible running in the way of, like you say, nothing really to play for, and a lot of teams sort of below us as well. So there is a risk that we could sort of drop down the table, but really, yeah, like you say, we haven't found any form recently. We've got a lot of injuries, and yeah, there's not a lot of positivity in terms of what's left of the season. But I still think it's important for Danny Schofield that he gets some results, because I think he's finding himself under pressure. And although there isn't anything to play for, obviously people still go, don't they? And to travel to Gillingham on Good Friday is a big effort from anyone who's going down, and actually, we owe it to everyone to make a fist of it.
Absolutely, yeah, and it's a real shame from your point of view, because just looking at your form a bit further back, there was 3 wins on the bounce back in February, but then it's only 1 in 9 since then, and that's obviously what's put paid to any lingering hopes of a top 7 finish. I think you're still 12th, which says about your form over the last couple of months to still be in the top half and have been that bad. Must be frustrating. Your last game, I think, was a 2-0 defeat against Crewe Alexandra, who we've beaten recently as well ourselves by 2 goals to 1. So obviously a very sort of recent link in terms of the same opponent. What did you make of that performance against the Alex? And then after that, I want to bring Charles in, a Northampton fan, quickly to talk about another recent game where you actually played each other.
Yeah, they were virtually sort of identical games. Lost 2-0 at home in both of them, and didn't play well in either. But yeah, it's interesting. Depends how you look at it, really. I think at the time when we won those 3 in a row, we were thinking that might propel us forward. But actually, looking back, they were actually vital that we got them 9 points just to get us to past the 50 mark. So I think, yeah, if this season was going on much longer, with all the players we've got out, I think we've got 10 players injured, and no recognised striker. I mean, Kieran Agard is fit, but he was an unused sub last week. So when your first 2 strikers are not available and he's still not able to get any sort of action, We brought on Jack Goodman, who's a teenager from the academy up front for the second half, which was a positive. But we've just really got no. I mean, our forwards were struggling a little bit anyway, but we've got no fit strikers. And yeah, it's just actually when you look at a lot of our underlying stats this year, I think we'd be in like the bottom three for a lot of them. Conceded the first goal in 24 games. Not scored. I think we're the worst too for games where you haven't scored. Obviously, you had that.
Yeah, you can't come on here and just take that away from me straight away. You've got to go some to start taking that stat away from a Gillingham fan.
And then 18 defeats. I mean, it's virtually half the game. So actually, like you say, for us to still be 12 probably doesn't say much about the bottom half of League Two, does it, in a way? But actually, the way I've looked at it is, although I think at the start of the season we were quite hopeful. I think just all those stats put together, if you'd have said to me at the start, this is what it looks like, I would have said we'd possibly be in a relegation battle. So I think we're almost doing better than we deserve to be doing, but obviously not as well as we'd like, which is a bit of a weird combination.
It is, yeah. I've written down consistently inconsistent. I think I looked at your sort of a graphic of your results, and it's ridiculous. Even that compartment of 3 wins and then 1 win in 9, and then there was other bits throughout the season. It was like 2 wins and a draw, then 4 wins, so then like 4 defeats or something like that, then a couple of draws, wins. There's just never been any real consistency where you've gone on a really long sort of unbeaten run to propel yourselves into that top portion of the table, and there's just too many defeats sort of that dotted about all the time. I find it incredible. You're 12th in the league and you've got minus 14 goal difference. So again, that comes back to the problems you've already alluded to. But before we come back to you, Daniel, I just want to speak to Charles, because obviously recently, as Daniel's alluded to, it finished 2-0 to the Cobblers in the game between you two. So what did you make of Rovers in that game, Charles? Did you see a side that was struggling in terms of injuries and form and confidence, or was there anything in there to give Daniel a bit of hope maybe for next season at least?
It's difficult because it felt like a very simple game for us, a very simple win. The one thing that I will say, and if Neil Harris has done his homework, which I'm sure he will have done, basically shoot on sight, because Jonathan Mitchell is the worst goalkeeper I have ever seen in my life. And honestly, I look at it and go, it was funny because we had a Doncaster fan on our preview show before that game, and we had this same conversation. So Jonathan Mitchell was our goalkeeper when we were in League One, the season under Keith Curle, where we couldn't go to the games and we were dreadful. And honestly, if we'd have had a matchstick in goal, we might have had a chance of staying up, because he would just drop the ball constantly, let goals in that look like they should just be simple, takes for a goalkeeper of a football league pedigree. And yet, no. And once again in that game, Jonathan Mitchell basically handed us the first goal. It was one of those where you just look at it.
Just the one where the first one went straight through him, and the second one he passed it to the centre forward.
Yeah, exactly. So the first one, I'm really gutted that we didn't get to see a behind the goal view, because you would have seen it go through his legs. Basically, he's gone down the way that a goalkeeper should go down, one knee down on the floor, lying across, the other leg up. And somehow he's just left a massive gap between his legs and the ball's gone straight between them. It should never be a goal. And any other goalkeeper in this division, and probably the division below, would have saved it comfortably. I looked at the rest of the team and I thought to myself that I know you had your injury problems with them, but it felt to me like they were all on the beach and just they weren't really that concerned. And I wonder whether, from a Doncaster perspective, it's potentially players thinking, well, I'm not going to be here next season anyway, so whatever. And those that are going to be there next season are kind of going, well, I've got a contract. At the very least, I'll be here sat bench warming. So I haven't really got much to do here. Personally, I think with Doncaster, the issue is that they just don't seem to have got a team. Basically, it's the same thing as what really I see happen with Gills at the end of last season. The team weren't good enough to stay up. you get into that rut of not being able to win games, and it follows you into the next season. You don't have a big enough changeover. Weird things from the outside, I appreciate that this perspective comes from, happened where you signed Lee Tomlin, who was old, still really good footballer, but then within a matter of weeks decides he's going to retire. So I just don't get it. I don't understand. Obviously, mistakes, I think, were made in that pre-season from a Doncaster perspective. And it's just meant that they didn't manage to stop the rot. And nobody quite knows what they're really doing. And I think Schofield is trying to play a particular way, a little bit like how basically Harris hasn't changed his style, I don't think, with Gillingham. But he's now got players that can actually do it. I think Schofield is going, this is the system that I want to play. I know that I don't have the players that are good enough to implement it properly, but give me a transfer window in the summer and hopefully next season we will do. So as long as you get through, I think, looking at it from my perspective, as long as you get through and you don't end up in, which I don't think you will, by the way, Daniel, go down or get into that battle, then you can reset in the summer and as you know, the saying goes, go again. But if I was a Gills fan, I'd be expecting a fairly comfortable win. You're at home, you're in form. Doncaster aren't, and I think they're on the beach, and also really worried about the goalkeeper they've got between the sticks as well.
Daniel, your chance to fire back or agree. I mean, it's difficult to back Jonathan Mitchell at the moment, unfortunately, because Saturday wasn't just a one-off. It's happened all too regularly from your point of view. And Charles has brought up a couple of good points that I've written down. I said, are Doncaster the first team that are essentially on the beach in the division at the moment, based on results and the way that you're playing games? And then it comes on to, is Danny Schofield still the man to take you forward into next season? So first of all, Jonathan Mitchell, and then maybe you can cheer yourself up and all the Donny fans that are watching by giving some crumbs of comfort moving into 23-24 and Danny Schofield being able to progress and implement this system with essentially better tools.
Yeah, I think it's been interesting with the goalkeeper. I think Mitch has played most of the games, and at times we have been that bad defensively that, you know, he has made saves to keep us in games. But I think his shot stopping difficult shots, if that makes sense, it's been pretty good. Like against Bradford, he sort of made this brilliant save from a header, but then from the next corner he like missed it, and Cook again had a header just to sort of nod it over the line. But yeah, he's made, the problem is so many individuals have made so many mistakes, and obviously in goal it tends to go in, doesn't it? But yeah, we've just been plagued by individual mistakes, and he's not a natural at sort of this playing out from the back either, which, inverted commas, is what Schofield's trying to do. Although again, yeah, I'd probably just question the whole approach, because I think looking back, our stats are, like I said, we've been inconsistent, but the stats are consistent, and we've had, after a long period where managers have stayed for quite a period of time, or they've left because they've been nicked by somebody else. We've had 4 managers at one point in the space of about 80 league games, I think it was. And we've sacked the manager. Obviously, the next person comes in, tries something different, which hasn't worked. The person after that then tries what the first person did, because the second thing didn't work. I think we're just trapped in this loop. And actually looking at it, I don't think Gary McSheffy did that bad, because, for example, when we went to Northampton early in the season, we actually played pretty well, and that was one of Tomlin's better games, and we sort of won 1-0. And, you know, I actually think he wasn't as bad as everyone made out, but at the point he went, you couldn't really argue for him going, because you thought, well, he's had 40 odd games and we're still, like I say, you're just watching it thinking, I'm still not sure what the style is, still not really sure what the approach is. So in some senses, you couldn't really question McSheffy going, but I think looking back now, you think we're no better, other than, for example, I'm watching it thinking I can see what Schofield's trying to do. but we now actually can't do it. So we've kind of gone from not really knowing what we're doing to we know what we're doing, but we can't do it, which in my mind is probably the same thing in a way, but actually...
So the end result's probably essentially the same, isn't it, unfortunately, and that's inconsistency and poor results.
Yeah. So I suppose, like you say, there's a school of thought that would say if he can bring the players he wants in, then it should be better. But I don't think there's any guarantees, because I think trying to play this way in League Two is not going to be easy. So, but do we fall into the same trap of, you know, sacking another manager and then we're on to a fifth manager in X amount of games? And again, presumably the approach would completely change again, because if the person coming in doing what the person going out is doing, you're not really replacing it. So I think I'd be inclined to stick with him and give him the transfer window and sort of any benefit of the doubt. But I think, you know, Mick Sheffy himself would probably say, well, hang on, I got sacked for similar results, so what's the difference? So it's really difficult. I think we're just in this sort of period where I think if we use this season to our advantage, it might not be so bad, because I think a lot of people are worried about a relegation battle next year. But I think, you know, if we learn from this year, we won't make the same mistakes. And I think we've had a statistically bad year, like you say, goal difference of -14, but we're still, you know, we're not going to go down if we didn't get another point, because the bottom two aren't going to get above us. But there's still that expectation that people think we, for whatever reason, should be in the playoff, which I don't see personally, because I think I've worked it out the other day, we've lost 61 out of the last 108 league games, which is actually 5 different managers, if you count Darren Moore's end to his reign as well. So we're just in a bad sort of run. But if you said to me now, you're going to lose 61 of your next 108 games, you could be in sort of National League North, I would think. So actually, we've not dropped that much, I don't think. We've dropped from being a really bad League One side to a bang average League Two side. It's only about 13 or 14 positions for all those defeats, if you like. So, yeah, I actually think it could be a lot worse, is probably what I'm trying to say. We've only got to look at our
No, I totally get what you're saying in
road.
terms of the percentage of games that you've lost in that period of time. To have only dropped essentially half a division, I suppose, is a positive and a silver lining, you know, if you're desperately trying to find one. Looking at players now, though, as opposed to the coach and the setup and everything else that goes with it in terms of the running of the club. You've mentioned already that there's injuries. Before I ask you what 11 you may be out of the field come 3 o'clock Friday afternoon, I've written down George Miller 11 goals, Carl Hurst 6 and Harrison Biggins 5. Between them, they've got 55% of your league goals this season. So again, that's not that I'm one to sit here and preach about goal scoring problems in the league, watching my team for the first half of the season. Number one, are them players going to be fit? Because you've said that strikers is a massive issue at the moment in terms of being injured. And how much of an impact has that had, the fact that if you take them 3 out, then nobody else is really contributing to a level that you deem acceptable?
Yeah, I think of those 3, only Hurst is fit at the minute, and he was actually on the bench the other week, so I can actually see why people are criticising Schofield at times, because some of it is a little bit baffling. I think it was the Northampton game, actually, although he came on, whichever game it was, he came on quite early because there was another injury. But yeah, Miller and Biggins are both injured and out for the season. And we also lost Noyle to Stockport, who was our right wing back. He assisted a lot of goals and actually really suited Schofield's style, because it was sort of him and Maxwell on the other side as wing backs were providing a lot of the attacking threat, even though at times it's a back 5 when you've not got the ball. And they're both out as well. So I think it's like a combination of not only the goals, but the assists as well. And yeah, we haven't really got the players at the minute to be playing with a system that he's absolutely not going to change from. So I think, like you say, it might be a little bit of not an experiment, but him sort of saying, look, this is how I play, this is what I need. And actually on Friday, if we do get comfortably turned over, it's just pointing towards what he needs. And if he does get a result, it's almost, well, actually it can work. So I still think we are strange. I think we scored the first goal 13 times and we've won 12 and drew 1. So actually, if we scored first on Friday, the stats say you won't beat us.
Yeah.
But we're not scoring many goals. So it's strange, but actually, like you say, although it sounds weird, we could come and win 1-0 because, you know, if we do score, we're quite hard to play against. I think we just don't really know what we're doing when we go behind and we're trying to pass and not getting anywhere. Then it ends up getting hoofed forward anyway. So it's not exactly total football, whichever way you look at it.
No, far from it, unfortunately. I'm not sure there's many teams in League Two that do play total football.
No.
Right. 3 o'clock, Friday afternoon. What's your 1 to 11?
I think
Or is it a case of whoever's fit at the moment gets a pair of boots and runs out onto the pre-field turf?
Well, I think young Goodman up front did enough last week to get a start. I think it'd have been really hard for him to start actually last week. But he came on and made a real impact as a bit of an old-fashioned centre forward. So we actually started without a recognised forward last week. So I think Goodman will come in for whichever of the 3 he had up front in inverted commas last week. Probably Hurst and Molyneux behind. And then the only other question I think is if Westbrook gets his first start, because I think he's been signed recently until the end of the season.
I see that in the week, or end of last week, came in on a free transfer. Was it Bristol Rovers, wasn't he, a couple of seasons ago?
Yeah, it's been hard to judge him because he's pretty much come on when we've been losing both games. But I'd imagine he'll probably start and then the rest will be as is because I don't think anyone will be coming back. So it'd be, Mitchell in goal, Anderson, Olaru and Nelson centre backs. Nelson's on loan from Leicester. He's probably one to watch out for. He's quite a tidy sort of ball playing centre back. It'll be Seaman and Rowe as wing backs / full backs. And then I imagine Westbrook will probably play alongside Close. And then Goodman with Molyneux and Hurst. That'd be my guess.
Okay. So not too many changes from the last game. Just tweaks rather than wholesale swaps. Charles, I'm going to come to you quickly before we get the 2 fans of the clubs to do their score predictions. How do you see Friday afternoon going? I know you gave us a general overview of what you saw at Doncaster recently, but in terms of a score prediction, how do you see it going?
I think I would be foolish to not go for a Gillingham win for Friday. As I said before, I think Doncaster they're just not. Something's just not right. Whether that is the manager or whether it's the players, I don't know. I've only watched them obviously twice this season. First time around, I agree with you, by the way, Daniel. You played quite well. I thought actually both sides cancelled each other out in the first game at Sixfields earlier in the season. And then Tomlin basically cleverly won a penalty. Sean McWilliams just putting his boot in where he shouldn't have done. And, you know, Tomlin goes down like he would do and then sticks away the penalty. But it's a different kettle of fish now. And like I said before, Matt, if you shoot on sight, one of them will go in. It just will. I mean, I get what Daniel says is that actually, I think you're right. The big saves, the ones that you go, wow, he saved that. Brilliant. He's good at doing that. But it's the simple stuff.
Plus, they mean nothing, unfortunately, if you then chuck one in your own net.
Exactly. And you just you look at it and you just go, right, if you press them high, they'll make mistakes. That's how we scored our second goal. I mean, essentially got an assist from Mitchell for that one. So if you do that, I think you'll win fairly comfortably. I'd probably say it'd be 2-0 Gills.
Daniel, I'll come to you as a Doncaster fan. What are you thinking in terms of a score come 5 o'clock Friday afternoon?
Yeah, I'm not expecting anything, but yeah, like I say, I think it depends. If you score first, that'll be it. If we score first, we haven't lost all season. So it's like say, can we? I think we have been slightly better away recently. Just I know the stats don't suggest it, but I think we're finding it easier to not play at home,
Of course, yeah.
even if it's not easy to play away. Like at Crawley, and I was quite impressed with Crawley the other week. But we did nick the first goal and defended, and actually very nearly sort of won. It took a really good equaliser for them to get back in it. So yeah, I think like you say, if you were sort of making a sensible prediction, you'd say probably 2 or 3-0 home win. But actually, like you say, you've been on this record where you haven't lost, and we don't look like winning, and it is the sort of league. Like I say, if we scored, I'd back us not to lose, if that makes sense. So,
of course. I think it's a similar approach from both sides from what you're saying. Gills have and since the takeover have been better scoring first. We're not a good side chasing, and that's backed up by the defeats that we've had in that run of 16 games. We went to Mansfield and tried to go toe to toe, conceded the first goal, lost 2-0. Same at home to a good Bradford side. Same away to Walsall, deflected first, chased it, couldn't score, got caught on the break, and then Barrow was slightly different last weekend. We got back level with about 10 minutes to go, and then unfortunately the lad smashes one in the top corner. You can't do anything about that. But all our defeats since the new group of players have come together, we conceded the first goal. Whereas if you look at games where we've scored first, we picked up plenty of points. So, did you give a score?
It could be anything, isn't it? From yeah, sensibly, I'd say 3-0 Gillingham, but it wouldn't surprise me if we won 1-0. It's just been that really odd sort of season, really.
I've actually written mine down, and weirdly enough, I said 2-0 Gills. If people can see that, it's just there. That's the defeat Monday, but we'll get to that in a minute. Yeah, I think the same as Charles. I don't like backing against my own team, regardless of how poor we are, because we love the club at the end of the day. But we've won 6 out of 7 or 7 out of 8 at home since the takeover, and the only side that have beaten us was a very, very good Bradford side, who I'd say are probably top 2 or 3 sides that I've seen us play all season long. So I'd say 2-0 to the Gills, and I've actually written down Ollie Hawkins and Tim Dieng to score the goals. Daniel, a real pleasure. Thank you, mate. Appreciate your time for that. Hopefully you stick around and listen and give some input on the Cobblers, because I want to get your views on them. But we're going to move over now to Charles, like I say, from the It's All Cobblers to Me podcast, and now look forward to the game Easter Monday. We understand it's going to be slightly difficult to do team lineups and that type of thing for this game, because we don't know what's going to happen on the first round of fixtures. But Charles, it's fair to say you're in fairly decent nick at the moment after a little wobble, sort of January, February time. Looking at the last 6, we've done Gills. That's not changed. Obviously, it will change by the time the game's played, but we can't do that now. But in terms of Northampton, it's 14 points from the last 18 available. It's 4 wins, 2 draws, no defeats. And at home, it's 11 points from 18. So just dipping under that tally of what you've got overall, but still very solid. 3 wins, 2 draws, and just a solitary loss. I think it's 4 clean sheets in the last 6 at the Sixfield. So it's going to be a tough ask for Gills to go over there and turn your team over. You must be feeling confident after that little blip a couple of months ago, and you've got everyone back, everyone's fit. Sam Hoskins, the first Northampton player since about 1986, I think I read, to get to 20 league goals in a season, which is a phenomenal effort at any level. Like I say, you must be over the moon with how it's going at the moment.
I am, don't get me wrong, definitely. I do have to correct you on the everyone's back fit. We've got a whole 11 out injured, and that includes goalkeepers. So we could put out what I would see as being a fairly decent League Two.
Oh, I do apologise. I thought that was starting to clear up. I knew it had been bad.
No.
I didn't realise it was still that bad.
Unfortunately, it's it's still as bad. We've got about 4 or 5, I think, of our what you would definitely class as first name on the team sheet players. They're definitely out for the rest of the season. So
Oh,
We
blimey.
are struggling a little bit with that. We seem to be at the moment being carried through on a wave of positivity and togetherness. The way that the strength and the character of the group has been molded by John Brady and his coaching staff has just seen us all the way through this. I mean, I found it interesting you called it a blip. It was, for me, a catastrophic slump. It was awful. And I think we probably go back to, we lost in the game in between Christmas and New Year. We played Swindon at home and we lost 2-1. And I came out of the stadium, and it was at home, feeling just dejected. It wasn't quite a sellout, but it was close to a sellout. And it just felt like, and I don't know how you guys feel, but whenever we tend to have a sellout, it always feels like, and the stats don't back this up, right? But it always feels like you don't get the result that the sellout crowd deserves. I'm sure it's the same for every single football fan.
Yeah, ours usually happens when they do like a cheap ticket deal.
Yeah,
Invariably, you get turned over 1-0 to the most horrible goal imaginable.
exactly. So I kind of walked out going, oh, for goodness sake, yet again, we've not lived up to the big occasion. And I got pelters for it, right? We didn't play badly. And looking back in hindsight, it was probably bad. We went on and then we beat Orient the following game on the New Year's game. And everyone was like, there you go, sorted that out, beating the league leaders. This is all good. But then from there on, I think we only beat Barrow. And that was it in about what felt like about 12 games or something. It was horrible, really, really difficult. And I was going full on negative that we'll probably be lucky to make the playoffs at this case. So to have come out of that, the other side of that, and to now be second, which is, I think, where we were round about when, just before the slump actually started, is really good. But in terms of feeling confident, no, is the answer. I just can't. I can't feel confident. I feel positive, and I feel really, really, pleased and enthralled even with this side that we've got playing the way that they are at the moment. But I think it would be foolish of me to go in and say, right, no, I'm confident of a win, especially against the Gills side, who are up there in the form table. I think, actually, as you said before, this is obviously before Good Friday's game. We are top of the form table at the moment, but I believe that that's like only the last 6 games that are taken into account. You go over the last 3 months, and I think you'd be above us in that respect. So I think it'll be a good game. I'm looking forward to it. I think as a spectacle, it will be a decent watch. Getting a result, it will be one of those that will end up being ground out. So it won't be for either of us. We're not going to win 3 or 4-0, Gills or Northampton. It's going to be a tight scoreline. But I think the game itself could be quite entertaining. I can see there being one half each, basically, where one side is on top. And if I was a betting man, I'd put Cobblers have the best of the first half and then Gillingham have the best of the second. That tends to be how it is for us at the moment, especially at home, is that we'll have a decent first half, and then in the second half, the opposition will come back into it. It'll just be a question of, can we get ahead by enough in that first half to then hold on for the win. If you go back to the Stevenage game, that was the last game that we played, we drew 1-1. So we lost that clean sheet record, unfortunately, at Sixfields. But Stevenage were relentless in the second half. I'm sure both of you know, they basically just load the box at every opportunity from as far back and as close to the goal as they want to be. And it literally just peppers the ball into the box at every single opportunity. Every player is about 7-8 foot tall. They're all built like bricks. It's horrible. So to have withstood that barrage and got away with a draw in the end was really good, and I think shows the character of this Cobblers side. On the day we had Aaron McGowan, who is a right back by trade, playing centre back. He's 5'9", coming up against the likes of Piergianni and Danny Rose and coming out on top in those situations and those battles, it was a really hard fought and deserved point. So I don't think we'll ever have another game like that for the rest of the season. And it should put us in a fairly positive mood, if not a confident one.
Sure. No, totally understandable. Like we all know, we had Steve Evans as manager for 2.5 seasons. We know how he plays and he gets success doing it. It's not always the prettiest on the eye, but it gets results generally. Daniel, just want to bring you in then quickly. Charles has given us his thoughts there, which is brilliant. And what we did earlier in the show was got his point of view of the game played between you two sides. So now I want to do it the other way around. And I just want to see what you made of Northampton and just how impressed you were with them in that 2-0 victory over Doncaster just a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah, it was a difficult game to judge, really, because, like I say, the first goal was about 90 seconds, wasn't it? And like I say, Mitchell went straight through him, and it was almost like game one at that point, which, you know, that isn't really like us. Like, however bad we've been, we've tended to be competitive, but I think it's just that stage of the season, isn't it? When you play teams that really do need a result, and I've seen it, you know, the opposite over the years. It was just like Charles was saying, a comfortable win. But yeah, I'd probably have to admit the other week, I was just looking at that top, it seemed to me like a top 8 of the division, and maybe Sutton or Barrow could break into it. But, you know, Bradford just sitting on the outside at that point, and now Mansfield, it just felt like somebody was going to be disappointed. And I actually thought Northampton might be that team as one that not only dropped out of the top 3, but out of the, you know, finish 8. Because I just thought so few points between it. And actually, yeah, without knowing any of the detail, the results just seem to disappear, which is quite surprising. But they were actually my tip to probably slip out. And, you know, I've always thought Mansfield and Bradford would get in that top 7. It's like, who is going the other way? But no, to be fair, I think we had one of John Brady's first games back when you were trying to stay in League One, and it was a pretty like boring, horrendous 0-0 home draw. But I was like impressed with Northampton that day, because again, you probably thought at the time we still had an outside chance of playoffs, I think, in League One at that point. He just seems to have done a really sort of steady, if not unspectacular job from the outside, like a lot of 1-0 wins, it seems. Like when you went 1-0 up against Stephen, they just thought that'll be that sort of thing. But just, yeah, I think, like you've just alluded to, actually what you need in this division, like actually, yes, you need talent and goals, but actually you need togetherness and clean sheets. And like you say, you get 1-0 up and you defend it, and then your second goal comes because the other team throw the dice at some point. It's not a division generally where you win by sort of big margins. So, I mean, and obviously from the outside looking in last season, you know, you were so unlucky to miss out, but actually, you know, I'd like to see Northampton going up just as a neutral, just for that alone. So Brady must have done a really good job over that period, because I think he wasn't far off keeping you up when it looked like hope was lost. And then you should have been up last year, and I think you will go up this year. So pound for pound, he must be one of the better managers at the level, but he's never spoken about, is he? I don't think I've ever recalled anyone mentioning him. Like you say, Steve Evans gets mentioned all the time. It's probably for obvious reasons, but actually, pound for pound, Brady's probably done the best job over the last 2 years at least.
Yeah, it's a good shout, and I think I'll reiterate that certainly from my point of view. I can't talk for everyone, but yeah, after what happened on the final day of last season, I think there's lots of neutrals that would quite like Northampton to go up automatically and right that wrong. Charles, back to you. Obviously, Daniel spoke very highly of your club on the whole, and also John Brady. And just back to that point about the injury crisis, does that then make the job that John Brady's doing at the moment even more impressive when you've got essentially the same amount of players out injured that you're being able to field almost?
I think so. I think the fact that it's not our first team that anybody is seeing at the moment or has done for a little while is a testament to the job that he's doing. The one thing that we can talk about what happened on the last day of the season. I mean, I don't particularly want to, but the one thing that actually saw us not achieve promotion last year was our squad depth. We didn't have anything to bring off the bench, really. We were making the same substitution pretty much every single week for the last 3 months of last season, and that was to bring Danny Rose off the bench for anyone that was knackered, to basically just do what Danny Rose does, which is win headers and win fouls at the top end of the pitch, and to, you know, stem the tide and slow the game down. But apart from that, we weren't making any other substitutions whatsoever. So in the summer, the way that John Brady went about recruitment was very much with, we need more bodies in mind. And it was the big thing. I don't think we necessarily made, you know, apart from Danny Hilton, massive statement signings anywhere else. I mean, Danny Hilton, who was the statement signing, has been a massive flop, isn't playing. He's one of the injured players. He's still not scored for us. He's been dreadful, if you ask me, when he has played. Everybody else has been, you've kind of gone, okay, fair enough. I mean, I would suggest potentially signing of the season, you're going to hate me saying this, Matt, young Harvey Lintop has been absolutely incredible. And he's just been rewarded with a 2-year contract extension.
I've just written that down, and obviously it was someone I wanted to ask you about. So let's talk about it, because it was I don't want to say it's surprising, Charles, because they're kids at the end of the day, so you never know how they're going to progress or regress or, you know, disappear completely when they leave one club. And there was a couple that left in the summer. I think Gerald Satel went to Bolton and he's playing in their B team. Harvey obviously stayed at the same level and has absolutely thrived from an outsider looking in. Just how good's he been? Because he seems like a great kid. He seems very level-headed, works hard on the pitch, on the training ground and that type of thing. Was even good enough to phone me when I was having a mental health episode a couple of years ago. So top class pro from what I saw. Obviously it was limited time in the first team. Yeah, wax lyrical. The floor is yours.
Yeah, well, I go back to a game that we played away at Crewe down at the start of the season. It was a 2-2 draw, and we got that draw because Sam Hoskins decided to score an equaliser from the corner, which was amazing. But that day I will remember more for how good Harvey Lintop was when he came on. If you've ever been to Crewe and Gresty Road, you'll know that the away fans are housed on the side of the pitch, opposite the massively ridiculous out of context stand that they've got for the home supporters. Harvey was literally right in front of me for the entire of the first half, and he was brilliant. He is not afraid to take players on. He does them for pace. He does them for skill. He wants the ball. He's positive with basically everything that he does. He's got great mindset for football. He reads the game really well. As a right back, as a right wing back, he's been outstanding, especially for somebody that is so young. I mean, when I spoke to you earlier in the season, and this was off of a podcast. I think it was just social media or whatever. And I said, what on earth were you doing letting this lad go? Because he is going to be a star. He is incredible. The fact that we've tied him down to I think we had an option to just trigger a 1-year extension that we could have just done at any point. But he has earned himself the right to get a completely brand new deal for 2 years. And I tell you what, if he's still at our place at the end of those 2 years, I will eat my hat, because somebody will come in for him and pay decent money for him at a higher level. He is, sorry, Matt, brilliant.
Glad
And
I asked.
the thing is, he is still young, so he's actually technically been overplayed this season. He's having to play more games than I think John Brady would have liked him to. There was a period of time where I think he'd played too many games and he needed to be rested, and he ended up playing one game too many, and he got rinsed. He didn't have a good game whatsoever, so therefore he spent a little bit of time out of the team. At the start of the season, he had to start, I think, as right back. Aaron McGowan was injured. I think he'd had surgery over the summer, so he couldn't start. Harvey was playing. He played really well. The only game, and again, he had another one of those moments where I think he just played one game too many, and it was away at Ipswich in the nonsense trophy. We got absolutely hammered. I think it was 6-0, something like that. It was a dreadful, dreadful game from our perspective. Ipswich walked all over us, and unfortunately for Harvey, the level was just above him, a step above. But in League Two, he has been outstanding, and if we can keep him and keep him improving at the rate that he has done this season, then that lad will be playing championship football at some point in his career. I'm certain of it. He is outstanding. And if he's watching this, Harvey, you know, honestly, your career is
I'll
to
tag
be
him in it. I'm
amazing.
going to tag him when I put the video out because he deserves to hear this. Because, like I say, he's a great kid, and it's just what you're saying is a real shame because he had to play a lot of football for us under Steve Evans when we had that injury crisis, at least on a par with what you've had. I think there was games in that relegation season where we had 4 subs and they were all kids, and he was having to start. I think he was having to play right wing. And it's interesting what you said there. He'd look good for like 45, 55 minutes, and then he'd just blow up. And his legs would completely go. And you understand that he's a kid trying to play men's football. And we was having to go to like runaway leaders Rotherham with him in the team. And it wasn't fair. But you know, needs must and all that type of thing. So it was interesting to hear you say about the Ipswich game and it being a step too far and the level being too high and some way ahead of where he is currently. But having been relegated and now having heard what you've said, I mean, I'm not saying Harris out, but it just does make you wonder if we had just given him a chance and had a look at him in pre-season, whether he, you know, potentially could have been our first choice right back or at least played a decent amount of games. But that's life, isn't it? There's football teams up and down the country that have got rid of players and then had to spend millions to get them back higher up.
And we've done it, and we've done it ourselves. Countless numbers of pros have left us, and you look back at it 10 years later, and they're playing championship football, and you're thinking, "Wow, okay, we made a massive mistake letting that kid go." But it happens. I mean, the one thing that I will say is that it's credit, and I'm sure Harvey would say this. It's credit to John Brady, Colin Calderwood, Mark Richards, the coaching team, and the rest of the guys that are there as well. Just the improvements he made. Every time we sign a player, the number one thing that they say that made them decide to come to Sixfields was that coaching staff and the reputation.
I think he alluded to that in the interview when he signed the new deal, didn't he?
Yeah, we've got a reputation of improving players and of that being kind of like our philosophy now as a football club, is that we will take you and we will improve you. I talked about Danny Hilton before. He was a massive anomaly, really, of a signing over the last 18 months. Because everybody else that we've signed, we've taken players that are young, not quite in their prime. And we've basically said to them, we're going to improve you as a footballer. And either, you know, the plan is that we will make you a better player. Therefore, you will be able to go and command a better deal at a higher level. And hopefully, in the meantime, while you're getting better, you'll improve us and we will rise up through the leagues at the same time. We're a long way off from going and talking about getting ridiculous transfer fees and doing what you know, some clubs in Cambridgeshire that I won't mention do quite well, which is take young talent either from non-league or from around them and then selling them for millions to the Premier League and championship clubs. But I can see that's what we're trying to do with the players that we're bringing in. And it's testament to how good of a coach both John Brady and Colin Calderwood are. I think them as a team have done absolute wonders. And you just sort of see it, the connections that Calderwood has throughout football. He's got a lot of contacts and he's got a lot of people that are going to turn around and go, yes, Colin's going to sort you out, and he'll make sure that, you know, you will learn. John Brady came from our under-18s. He was our under-18s manager. That's where he got the job from, essentially. He was interim after Curl got sacked. And as Daniel said earlier, he very nearly kept us up in League One when I don't think we had any right to be. We were awful that season for most of it. But yeah, every single player that we've brought, I don't say, in fact, I mean, that's, you said, Matt, before, not every player works out. It doesn't work out at every single club they go to. There are going to be some that just don't happen for whatever reason. But on the whole, most of the players that we've brought in, we have improved, and we've seen them go from nobody to first team starter and looking like they deserve to be there. Harvey is incredible. He's not starting games at the moment, but you watch, he gets brought on late on, sort of 15, 20 minutes left to go, and he terrorizes whoever's at left back. And it's a joy to watch him. One thing that he needs to work on, I think, is his accuracy of his crossing, but he'll get there. He's a young lad. He's doing really, really well. I mean, I wouldn't want to be a left back up against him. I mean, I wouldn't want to be a left back, but, you know, it's one of those.
No, fair play. It's great to hear, sort of. Daniel, I'm going to come back to you. Score predictions for Northampton against Gillingham Easter Monday. So I want to get a neutral perspective first. How do you see the game panning out, and ultimately, what do you think the final score will be?
Yeah, I was just going to say before I go on to that, actually, that's what has encouraged me with Schofield about like the development of players.
Okay.
But actually, a couple of our players who I think will play at a higher level, like Hurst, we mentioned, and Olawu at centre back. They both signed new contracts recently, which I was actually quite surprised about, because I thought they might attract interest higher up. And I think it is nice that players do stay loyal when you've given younger players a chance. But yeah, going on to the game, I think, yeah, Northampton just seemed to have hit form at the right time. And like you say, I know, to be fair, like Gillingham is a difficult team to assess, isn't it? Because I mean, for that first half of the season, it just looked like you were going down without a goal, let alone a point. And then obviously this great recruitment, you'd probably be sort of a top three contender yourself. But I just think it's that the need to win at this stage is just more, isn't it? I just think Northampton will win, probably 1 or 2-0.
Fair enough. Charles, going to come to you.
I was toying with changing what we did on the previous show for It's All Cobblers to Me before and go massive win, but I won't do that to you, Matt. I think it'll be a tight game. When you look at the change in Gillingham from the team that we comfortably swept aside down at the Priestfield earlier in the season, it's a completely different kettle of fish now. And I think Daniel's right. If you'd had this investment and everything in the summer, obviously with the caveat of it being within plenty of time for the transfer window to
We'd win 7-0 on the final day of the season. You'd end up with the players.
You absolutely. But I think you'd be up there in the top three. So this is going to be a difficult game for us. As I said before, I'm not confident. I go into every game positive at the moment. I think it's going to be a good game to watch. I think it'll be a tight scoreline. I'm going to go positive. I'm going to go 2-1. I think that we are on a bit of a roll. We've got that form. We've got that mindset at the moment of setting right what happened at the end of last season. We've had that all year. The togetherness of the squad, as I said, is really carrying us through, even with all these injuries. And we do seem to just keep picking them up every single game. Jack Sowerby went off at half time against Stevenage, feeling his hamstring. We've got no update on whether he's going to be fit to play on Friday or Monday. We have been told not to expect any of the injured players back for this weekend's fixtures. So we're going into the game sort of not knowing whether Sowerby's part of that injury list or not, because they're being coy, but also looking at it and going, well, we're going to have to go with what we've got. Can we go on? And my worry is at the moment that the longer the season goes on, the more tired the players get, the more difficult the mental challenge and the mental battle is, as well as the physical one. This could be a game that determines the rest of the season. I think if
You're talking your way out of this convincing win if you're not careful.
I am, aren't I?
You're talking your way out of a
bad.
narrow win at least. Come on, give me a score.
I'll go 2-1. And I'll say Hoskins will get both because he's chasing Andy Cook for that golden boot, and I really want him to get it.
I don't like backing against my team, but I think if we beat Doncaster Friday, I'm not saying Monday becomes a free swing, far from it, but there's certainly less pressure on us then. Our away form is still patchy. I mean, it's an improvement on pre-Christmas. I think we're going along at just over a point a game since the takeover, but not pulling up any trees. I think Northampton's need will be greater than ours. So for that reason, I've said 1-0 to the Cobblers. I think they'll just nick it in a narrow game, unfortunately. But like you said, it'll be a completely different encounter to what we saw in Kent back in the winter. Charles, Daniel, been a real pleasure. I appreciate you both coming on. I've had great fun doing this. People, if you're still watching at this stage, thank you very much. Let us know what you think, because it is the first time I've done two previews in one show type setup, such as the nature of the games this weekend. So hope you've enjoyed it as much as we've enjoyed taking part in it. Do not forget that these videos are now all in association with Art of Football. So go and check out their website. The link is in the description at the bottom of this video for anything retro or vintage in terms of hoodies, t-shirts, sweatshirts, prints, classic shirts, bucket hats, caps, anything you can think of for any club. Go and check them out. It's a brilliant site. There will be a match day live on Good Friday. Myself, Boz, and whoever else wants to come and say hello, we'll be covering that game. Unfortunately, we'll not be making it to Northampton on Monday. If you are going, sing loud, sing proud, try and bring home the points, try and derail that promotion bid. 2 wins over Easter, I think, would see the Gills safe. 4 points would be brilliant. 3 points wouldn't be a disaster. I'm not sure how we're going to try and do a Monday review because there is a game going on that day. But if we can squeeze something in, we will try. If not, I'll be back middle of next week as normal. Thanks again to Charles. Thanks again to Daniel. I will put their Twitter handle details in the description of the bottom video. Go and give them a follow. Go and check out Charles's brilliant podcast. It's well worth a listen. You can listen to him wax lyrical about how brilliant Harvey Lintott is again and tear up all over again like I've just done. As always, thanks for watching. Please keep liking, subscribing and doing all that you do. But until next time, up the Gills.